and we're now live on YouTube. So please.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good to have you here. My name is Hadar Lubin, and I'm the chair of the Israel Advocacy Committee in Bnei Israel. And we're very happy to welcome you all to this important program. Every year in Israel, the siren will sound on Erev Yom HaZikaron to signal the start of the Memorial Day, remembering those who died defending Israel. The siren, heard throughout the country, will stop traffic, service, or any activity to allow citizens to stand up, bow their heads, and take a moment to honor the sacrifice for our freedom. Yom HaZikaron is a day filled with cemetery services, gathering of family and friends to remember the fallen, and a day to remember we must rise as a community. 24 hours later, the siren will be heard again to start the festivities of Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Independence Day, with parties, dancing, and celebration. For me, the proximity of these two events and the abrupt shift from grief to jubilee captures the importance and the essence of our existence as a Jewish state. We can never forget the enormous price of our freedom, and we must always remember that our independence is celebration worthy and is contingent on such sacrifice. Israel's survival is not only dependent on life sacrificed on the battlefield, but also on the Jewish diaspora's connection to Israel. We must never forget that Yom HaShoah is standing on its own, and that Yom HaZikaron can never do the same. As a 10-year-old during the 6 Days War, I will never forget the joy that spread throughout the country as we learned that the Kotel was freed and Jewish soldiers were the first to pray there. Children and adults alike were overtaken by this historic day as past prayers and present courage collapse in the face of unifying Jerusalem. Rabbi?
Thank you. Thank you, Hadar. And as we know, the modern state of Israel, Medinat Yisrael, will celebrate its 73rd birthday this week. And it's a cause for celebration through events such as this Zoom call this morning. The anniversary will also be marked in our worship services this coming Friday night. And very briefly, I'd like to provide some context on that, which also relates to our program this morning. Israel has transformed the Jewish world. The modern state of Israel has transformed the Jewish world. Jews have gone from utter powerlessness to sovereignty and its attendant issues. Powerlessness. 1945, the Holocaust, Shoah, 1939 to 1945, 2/3 of the Jews of Europe died in the Holocaust, few being offered direct assistance from an indifferent world. Powerlessness. When the state was established, most Jews did not live in freedom. Consider the populations of large number of Jews back in 1948. Jews then in Muslim lands, in the USSR, or even in South America. American Jewry in 1948, while large and increasingly populous, was the exception. We were the exception in 1948. And here there had been, at that time, there were fears of anti-Semitism. And remember, in 1948, the civil rights movement still lay ahead. Now, contrast 1939 to now, or contrast 1948 to now. Now Jews live in freedom. whether in Israel or the United States, by far the countries with the largest Jewish populations. Most Jews now live in freedom. And the Torah's central narrative is from slavery to freedom. And through the Zionist project, our people have made that trek. So too, as an ingathering of exiles, Israel itself has strengthened the Jewish world by blending communities from across the globe. Israelis hail from many different backgrounds, including Mizrahi, Ethiopian, Russian, and now in places like Netanya, increasingly French. That didn't just happen, but was the effect of a sustained policy of encouraging immigration, of aliyah. This phenomenon has strengthened both Judaism and the Jewish world. We see actualized the Torah's age-old promise of homeland and autonomy. As a Jewish homeland, the state of Israel is tied to religiosity. In 1948, the Israeli chief rabbinate published this prayer, and it published a prayer which became part of worship in many synagogues around the world. Now, the translation of this prayer will be archaic to modern Reform Jews, but I've purposefully left the translation as so. And in a moment, I'm going to screen share this prayer for you as I read it out loud. This was the English translation of Avinu Shebashamayim, the prayer for the state of Israel, published in 1948. Our Father, who is in heaven, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, the dawn of our deliverance, the beginning of our redemption. Shield it beneath the wings of your love, spread over it your canopy of peace, send your light and your truth to its leaders, officers, and counselors, and direct them with your good counsel. Strengthen the defenders of our holy land. Grant them, our God, salvation and crown them with victory. Establish peace in the land and everlasting joy for its inhabitants. Remember our brethren, the whole house of Israel, in all the lands of their dispersion. Speedily bring them to Zion, your city, to Jerusalem, your dwelling place. As it is written in the Torah of your servant Moses, even if you are dispersed in the uttermost parts of the world, from there the Lord your God will gather and fetch you. The Lord your God will bring you into the land which your ancestors possessed, and you shall possess it. And God will make you more prosperous and more numerous than your ancestors. Unite our hearts to love and revere your name and to observe all the precepts of your Torah. Speedily send us your righteous Messiah of the house of David to redeem those waiting for your salvation. Shine forth in your glorious majesty over all the inhabitants of your world. Let everything that breathes proclaim, the Lord God of Israel is king. His majesty rules over all. Amen. Selah. Now, even if certain concepts which you just heard in that prayer seem a little distant to us, note how the themes of inclusion and return and autonomy and hope are evidenced in this prayer. The success of the Zionist project has profoundly impacted American Judaism. And to make the point, I want to consider our Reform Jewish prayer books. The first one I'm going to hold up is the Union Prayer Book. Now, this edition was revised in 1961. Not only will you not find the 1948 prayer in this book, it does not contain a single reference to the state of Israel. Now, this prayer book is The Gates of Prayer, copyright 1975. Much has changed. The Eichmann trial and the Holocaust survivors beginning to speak out. 1967, the Six-Day War, Israel's great victory, which Hadar mentioned, more to come on that as well this morning. 1973, the Yom Kippur War and its concerns. The Gates of Prayer, this prayer book, dedicates 21 pages to Yom Ha'atzmaut, a service for Yom Ha'atzmaut for Israeli Independence Day. It includes Israeli poetry. It includes a reading from Ezekiel about dry bones reanimated, and that's likened to the modern state of Israel and the Jewish consciousness. Meditations on Jerusalem and the meaning of Zionism. It includes Herzl's most famous quote, "If you will it, it is no fable." And there are sections for additional readings, By the Waters of Babylon, If I Forget You, O Jerusalem, and Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people live. This book also includes at the back Hatikva, shortly after America's national anthem. So from here, 1961, to here, 1975, we see tremendous development. From this prayer book, which many folks on our call will recall, to this one, our current one, this is Mishkan Tefillah. So from 1975 to 2007, our current prayer book takes things further. 21 pages, 19 large pages, including a reflection for Yom HaZikaron, where Hadar first referenced for us this morning. Quotes about Israel from the Bible and rabbinic material. It includes sections of Israel's Declaration of Independence, which has now itself become a type of religious text. Mishkan Tefillah breaks down into a variety of segments for the miracle of rebirth, for the beauty of the land, for the ingathering of the exiles, for a just society, for the renewal of Jewish learning and language, for hope and peace, for the courage of Israel's people. There's a prayer for the state of Israel. There's Hatikva, a Yom Ha'atzmaut insert into a regular service, and within the weekly Torah service, a prayer for the state of Israel. Now, finally, lest you think as I'm holding up these books and you think our reform movement is not fully indicative of American Judaism or the American Jewish community, I'd like you to consider ever so briefly AIPAC. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee is dedicated to promoting the American-Israel relationship, the political strategic partnership. It was established in 1963. In 2004, its major event, which is called Policy Conference, attracted 5,000 people to Washington, D.C. That's a big number. In 2012, attendance was up to 12,000. It was 18,000 just before the pandemic. All told, we see here, as in the Birthright program for young people and other venues, a heightened consciousness of Israel within Judaism and the organized Jewish community. Now, even amidst ongoing challenges, let us be grateful for the security the Jewish people now possess, ensuring freedom and protection. And may we see recognition of the state of Israel, problems and all, as the dawn of our deliverance. That point will be highlighted in worship on Friday night, as we do each year. The Jewish Federation is not only our partner on the campus, it's also a critical go-to address for organized commitment to the state of Israel. And so I'm delighted to introduce Gary Jones, our Federation Director, and my friend for a brief welcome. Gary?
Thank you, Rabbi. It is a true honor to be your friend, but it's also an honor always to be able to listen to your words. So thank you very, very much for that context. As Rabbi said, I am Gary Jones, the Executive Director of the Jewish Federation of Western Connecticut. On behalf of the Jewish Federation, I welcome you to this terrific program, Ammunition Hill, Daddy, Now I Know. Your federation is proud to join with B'nai Israel Southbury and JNF-USA in providing another opportunity to increase our community's understanding of Israel, its history, and its challenges. The U.S.-Israel relationship is central to the safety and security of Israel and to the safety and security of the Jewish people throughout the world. As a result, the Federation has made it, as Rabbi said, a priority to increase Israel programming in Western and Northwestern Connecticut. We will continue, therefore, to work with B'nai Israel's Israel Advocacy Committee and others in our catchment area to ensure that our constituents continue to be educated on these important matters. And we encourage all of you to let us know of future Israel programming opportunities so that we can continue to make sure that our constituents are educated and able to articulate the values and benefits of Israel to everyone else in our catchment area. So thank you very, very much, and I look forward to the rest of our program.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce myself briefly. Dan Goodman. I have very troubling news. There was confusion about the time, and I'm very, very sorry, but our speaker is going to join us at 1 o'clock. I take responsibility for the error. We'd like very much for you all to come back 1 o'clock, use the same Zoom code, and it'll probably be a half hour then at that point. Or if there's interest, we can certainly go longer to include questions and responses. So I apologize again. I take the responsibility on myself, and please see if you can come back at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much. Hadar? You're on mute, Hadar.
I said that that's actually, I mean, to be independent and to go from Yom HaShoah to have Southern Israel, we cannot not have glitches. We cannot not have bumps. So thank you, Dan. My apology extended to all of you, made the time this morning. And if you can, please join us at 1 o'clock. Rabbi, say a prayer for us.
Well, again, things happen. I hope as we can organize our days that we can jump back on together. One thing I would add, just as a teaser now for 1 o'clock, is that to go to Jerusalem, and for those of us who have been, and for those of us who are looking forward to going, Ammunition Hill plays such an important part in the history of Jerusalem and in the history of the modern state of Israel. So my prayer is that we can reorganize our days slightly and reconvene in just a few minutes. So with that,